If you think about Bill Gates today, you probably picture a sweet old grandpa in cozy knit sweaters, donating billions to charity and reading books under a tree. But they sold you a heavily censored version of the story. Before the philanthropy, before the foundation, Bill Gates was the most lethal, calculating, and ruthless corporate shark in the entire history of technology. How is it possible that a college kid who didn't invent the operating system, didn't invent the icons, and didn't invent the mouse, ended up building the most crushing monopoly on the planet? Today we're going to talk about the dark side of success. We're going to talk about how he betrayed his best friend when he got cancer, how he stole the future from Apple right in front of their faces, and the master move with which he legally scammed the biggest company in the world for only $50,000. If you still believe that to become a billionaire you just need to be a good person and have good ideas, this video is going to slap you right in the face. Stick with me until the end, because today we're going to dissect the real war manual of Bill Gates. Subscribe, smash that like button, and let's get started. Everybody tells you Bill Gates was a genius, and he was. But the world is full of broken geniuses. What Gates had, and what 99.9% of normal people don't, was an unfair advantage. Born into a wealthy family at just 13 years old, they put him in Lakeside, one of only 50 schools in the entire United States that even had a computer in the 1960s. While other kids were playing baseball, Bill was sneaking out at dawn to rack up thousands of hours of programming. By the time he was 17, he and his friend Paul Allen already had more real-world systems experience than most adult engineers with college degrees. But the real magic of Bill Gates wasn't in his code. It was in his brutal commercial aggression. When the first personal computer hit the market in 1975, the Altair 8800, it was basically a useless box that couldn't do anything. Bill and Paul saw the opportunity immediately. They sold the brain, the software, to that machine. They founded Microsoft and started making money. But here's where Bill shows his claws. His co-founder, Paul Allen, suddenly gets diagnosed with aggressive lymphoma. The chemotherapy destroys him. So what does Bill, his childhood best friend, do? Instead of supporting him, he starts secretly conspiring with the new manager, Steve Ballmer, to dilute Paul's shares in the company because, quote, he wasn't working hard enough anymore. Bill Gates didn't care about your health. He didn't care about friendship. If you couldn't keep up with the insane pace of the machine he was building, you were out. Paul eventually resigned. Now we get to 1980. This is where the most brilliant and savage business deal of the 20th century takes place. IBM, the undisputed corporate giant of the world, decides to build its own personal computer. But they need an operating system. They come knocking on Microsoft's door. Any normal entrepreneur would have said, "Of course, we'll lock ourselves in for 6 months and build you the best system." But Gates didn't think like an employee. He thought like a king. He knew they didn't have enough time, so he did something bold. He went to a tiny local company, bought a ready-made operating system from them for a measly $50,000, renamed it MS-DOS, and walked straight into negotiations with IBM. IBM offered to buy the software outright. It was a huge amount of money, but Gates refused. He made them a counteroffer that would change human history. "I'm not selling it to you, I'm licensing it. You're going to pay me a royalty on every single IBM computer you sell with my system." And IBM, convinced the real money was in the hardware, accepted. Here's the quick financial lesson. Steve Jobs and IBM were playing the hardware game, selling physical boxes that cost money to build, store, and ship. Bill Gates decided to sell intellectual property instead. Zero production costs. He understood something powerful. It doesn't matter who builds the best car. If you own every single road they have to drive on. Microsoft became the mandatory toll booth of the entire digital age. By 1984, Steve Jobs was building the most beautiful computer the world had ever seen, the Macintosh. It had icons, windows, and a mouse. Jobs hired Microsoft to create the internal software. Bill saw that graphical interface and his mind exploded. He knew that was the future, so he ordered his team to copy it exactly. A short time later, Microsoft launched Windows. Steve Jobs went nuclear. He called Gates into Apple's offices and screamed in his face, "You're copying us. I trusted you, and now you're stealing from us." Most people would have backed down from Jobs' fury. But Bill Gates, with terrifying calm, looked him dead in the eyes and delivered the most humiliating line in tech history. Steve, I think there's more than one way to look at this. To me, it's like we both had a rich neighbor named Xerox. I went into his house to steal the television, only to find out you had already stolen it first. Checkmate. Bill knew Apple hadn't invented the interface either. They had taken it from Xerox too. Windows crushed the Macintosh in sales because Gates didn't want to build an elitist closed machine like Jobs. He wanted his software on 90% of the computers on the planet, no matter the brand. By the age of 31, Bill Gates was already a billionaire, and when Office arrived, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Microsoft became an absolute monopoly. If you wanted to work, study, or even exist in the modern world, you had to go through Bill Gates' cash register. He was so aggressive in his tactics, suffocating competitors before they could even breathe, that the United States government itself dragged him into court for monopolistic practices. In the courtroom, the world watched an arrogant Gates who dodged questions and openly mocked the legal system. He had won the money game, but his public image was now that of a ruthless villain. Steve Jobs later summed it up with a brutal line. Winning in the market was always more important to him than making great products. He ended up being the richest guy in the world, and if that was his goal, well, he got it. The story of Bill Gates is not a fairy tale about a lovable nerd. It's the cold, hard truth that in business, the person who reaches the top is rarely the one with the best idea. It's the one with the best execution and the wildest hunger. Gates didn't invent the personal computer. He didn't invent the graphical interface, and he didn't even write the system he sold to IBM. But he understood the business better than anyone else. So here's my question for you. How many times have you stayed frozen because your product isn't perfect yet, while someone out there with half your talent but twice the aggression is quietly stealing your customers? In the real world, execution eats perfection for breakfast. Drop your answer in the comments. Do you think you have to be a predator in business to build a multi-billion-dollar empire? Or can you reach the top by being the good guy? I'm reading every single one of you. If this video woke you up and changed how you see success, share it right now. Subscribe to the channel so we can keep tearing down the titans of history. I'll see you at the top of your financial freedom.